So our special guest this evening, all the way from Surrey, and imagine that Max lives in Surrey, and this is his first time at Brooklands. Can you believe that? We'll have to put that right, and have to have him back. So please welcome, big warm welcome, please, for Max Chilton.
What a nasty way to introduce me. And can I just say, I have been to Brooklands multiple times, especially the kart track. It used to be owned by a good friend of mine, and been to the Mercedes side, but I've never come here. But meeting some of you wonderful people this evening and hearing that you do car shows and different classic car events, which I'm a huge lover of classic cars, I will definitely be coming back.
Yeah.
And I need to see what's in all these amazing halls that you've got around here with cars, engines, planes. That's right up my street. So I definitely will be back.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for joining us, Max. And well, normally we start off at the beginning of a driver's career, but not usually. I'm this young.
There we go.
So were you showing promise at that age?
Maxi cozy. Well, I was definitely showing promise for bleached blonde hair and making it look cool, but whether I was going fast or not is another matter. That I can tell was already a hand-me-down in 1991 from my brother, so probably had a few dings and dents on it. But yeah, always been a huge car lover. And I just want to say it's a huge pleasure to be here. I was not expecting this many people. And I feel like this, going back to my childhood, it was like watching an episode of This Is Your Life, but maybe I don't get presented with a red book and my year one teacher doesn't walk in. But my childhood dentist is on the front row, Mrs. Greenwood. So I've got someone to my early part of my life. So yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to explaining my career and the things that I've experienced. It's been a varied career of multiple different things, and I'm still doing it, not professionally, but classic-wise. So, yeah, looking forward to telling you my journey.
So you started off seriously, Max, as most people do, obviously, with karting aged about 10.
Yep.
What do you recall of your karting year? And quite often you find that drivers sort of move up through the ranks together. Were there any notable drivers alongside you in karts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the amazing thing with motorsport. We're all here for lovers of cars or motorsport, and I think you all agree it's a huge part of all of our lives because of the people you meet. That's the biggest thing for me. And the kids that I was racing against here in cadets, this was, I'm going to say, 1998, 99. I was probably 8 or 9 here. Are still some of my best friends now. We've all come up. Now, some obviously don't make it, or some don't make it but still are in motorsport, whether they're team managers or mechanics, and we've just seen each other grow. But there are certain drivers that stick out, and I think on the next photo is a photo of me and Jules Bianchi. That was probably a couple of years later than this photograph here, when we were probably 11 or 12, and we were teammates in go-karts. We were rivals in Formula 3 and GP2, which is now Formula 2. And then, before you know it, it's 2013 and we're teammates in Formula 1. So it is weird how you sort of come up through the ranks together, and certain drivers all the way through. So it's an amazing thing, and it's just crazy that was, that must have been 25 years ago now, which scares me. I'm 33. I can't believe I've had a 25-year racing career, but, you know, that's the way it works. So Jules Bianchi's the one on the left. We can talk about him later. He is one of the most gifted drivers I was ever teammates against. And then in the next photo, I can see in the background of that shot is a guy called Harry Tinknell. So I've got a lot of respect for Harry because we came up through the karting ranks together, and he did do single-seaters. But it wasn't sort of working for him, and he made the switch to go to endurance racing, and it was one of the best switches I've ever seen because whilst everyone else still tried to make single-seaters work, he just went down the endurance route, and now he's one of the most experienced, well-paid endurance racing drivers because he made that switch early. So it's not always about your skill as such. It's about making the right choice at the right time. So
yeah, and we'll talk about touring cars later, and a similar sort of choice that a driver can make at that stage of his career. Yeah. So I think it's defunct now, but back about 2005, you raced in this Formula T cars.
T-cars.
What age were you in that then?
So there I was probably, I'm going to say, I was probably 13. I don't know what on earth I'm wearing there. Like, are they pedal pushers? I don't know if men can wear pedal pushers, but they look like it, 3/4 length trousers. But I've got a lot of respect for that car, and that is, when I came out of karting, that was the first racing car that I ever drove. Now, that doesn't really happen anymore, where karters go from go-karts to cars. It's very much go-karts to single-seaters now. But back then, it was this. Ginetta was just starting, but for me, Ginetta was not as good as this car. This was a T car. My brother had done it 4 years previous. He was in the first ever year in the year 2000. And he had some great drivers. He had Matthew Wilson, who went on to be a World Rally driver. There were some great drives that came from T cars, and I went on to do it. My brother's 6 years older than me. And this was down in Spain. It's a space frame chassis car, 5-speed, manual, had to learn how to heel and toe perfectly, because if you didn't, the rear axle would lock and it was like pulling the handbrake. And I think that's why I love classic cars now. I've got a Cortina. It's very much rear-wheel drive, not a huge amount of grip, but you had to learn and feel all those different noises and clutch points and heel and toes, which doesn't happen now. Most drivers on Formula One now wouldn't have a clue how to heel and toe because they've never needed to. They've come out of a go-kart and they've just had to, paddle shift. So I was really thankful for having that. The series, I think, in probably 2005 came to an end because Ginetta took over. It was a more publicised series. It was more funded and it was cheaper. And so T-cars came to an end. But I still know a few people that still own their cars. They're in some barns all around Essex and Surrey and Kent. But yeah, I had a lot of fun racing that. And that was the closest they ever came to winning a championship. It was the one thing in my career I never got to do was win a championship. I came very close. I finished second in this championship and had some great battles. I was not teammates, but up against Jolyon Palmer the year I finished second. Luciano Bachetta won the championship. Alex Brundle was also in it. So there were some sort of known drivers and we all went on and had varied careers doing different things. But it was great fun at the age of 13 and 14 racing a 130-mile-an-hour car. Yeah, and as you say, a great nursery experience and learning all that stuff that you put to good use later in your career. So you mentioned your brother, so it's quite a small photograph. This is your older brother, and you look as if you're racing together there in the same team. Yeah, it also looks like we put our fingers in the socket. I have no idea what we were doing with our hairstyles. I think because I was the younger brother, I just copied my brother, thinking he was cool. But now we look back and think, what on earth are we doing? But that photo, I can tell, was part of the ELMS, which doesn't really exist anymore, but it was the European Le Mans series at the time. And that was the year 2007. I was 16. I'm going to say it was June or July at Silverstone. It was the 1,000 kilometres of Silverstone. And I was racing a Zytek LMP1 car with my brother. He had already been racing a couple of years in Le Mans cars. But I was doing 200 miles an hour down the back straight at Silverstone at the age of 16. It was mind-blowing. And we finished fifth overall because actually my brother qualified the car, crashed in qualifying. We thought we repaired the car, started racing really well, and then I went through Maggots and Beckett's and the rear wishbone failed in the race because they hadn't detected the crack from the crash. Lost 2 or 3 laps, but we were so quick, we came back round and finished 5th overall, and that was all at the age of 16. So it was an amazing part of my life. I look at photos now when I was in the pit lane, and I was under half my age now, driving a 200-mile-an-hour car. But I had great fond memories from doing that with my brother. I think then you went to America then, I think, to race your brother at that time? Yeah, so the other race we were meant to do that year was Laguna Seca, and we'd already agreed with NASCAR is like the governing body out in America, and because I was so young, we had to have it pre-approved that I was okay to come to America and race this 200-miles-an-hour car around Laguna Seca, and they said yes. So we flew everything out there to race in the ALMS at the time, the American Le Mans Series, up against, at the time, it was the Porsche Spider, which is now a multi-million-dollar car, and the Audi R8, which was when it was at its prime. We got out there, and then the governing body said, no, if a 16-year-old crashes and injured someone in the crowd, we would be closed down tomorrow. So they actually paid to fly out Darren Manning, who was another British driver, to race the car with my brother and pay for my drive in a thing called Star Mazda, which went on to become Indy Lights. It was a bizarre time, but I had a great time, and that was the first time I ever raced at Laguna Seca in 2007. And then Laguna Seca went on and played a big part in my career. I ended up holding the fastest lap record in an Indy Lights for multiple years, being fastest in IndyCar pre-season session there, and then we'll talk about it later, but I now got the hillclimb record at Laguna Seca. So It's an amazing track. I love Laguna Seca. It's not big, but it's really undulating. We all know the famous corkscrew section, and every time you drive that, it's a shock on the body which you can never get used to. Yeah, we'll come back to Laguna Seca later on. So the next step, obviously, up the racing ladder, the next progression is obviously Formula 3. So I think we've got to about 2007 or so now. Yes, that is. This one is actually 2008 with High Tech. I did my first year of 2007 was a company called Arena Motorsport, which used to be owned by Mike Earl, which was the Onyx Formula One team. And I raced for him in 2007. This was 2008 with a team called High Tech Motorsport. I was teammates with a guy called Walter Grubmuller. And that's where the year before in 2007, I was with Arena. I was the only driver, had no teammate. I'd never raced a single seater in my life. And I was in not the lower end Formula 3. I was straight in the high end international class. Had no data, and it was really difficult. But then I came up to High Tech and had a teammate with some great data, and that's where I really started to learn a skill and show my potential. And then the following year was the year 2009 when I finished fourth in the championship, and I was teammates with
the British
in British Formula 3.
Yeah.
And I was teammates with Daniel Ricciardo, who was a very funny, as you can imagine, and amusing teammate. We shared the same amount of front row poles. So we had the same amount of pole positions that year, same amount of front row starts, but I probably wasn't as good a racer as him. So I could keep him on his toes in qualifying, and then I'd usually let it slip in the race. So I finished fourth in the championship, and he won it. The funniest thing with that year, and I say it was funny, it was probably the thing that lost me the championship. I qualified on pole for the first race. He qualified second. Alton Park, Easter Sunday, so it was we'd had a whole Saturday off because it was Friday qualifying, nothing on Saturday, and then Sunday. I've come to my grid spot, preloaded the clutch, had the handbrake ready to go, lights came on and I went because I was so ready to go, and obviously you need to wait for the lights to go out. So then my team was saying, just go, because you're going to get a drive-through. So I'm now full throttle, and the rest of the grid are just still standing still. and I'm trying to make up as much time as possible because I knew I had a time penalty coming. But I think we still managed to finish fourth or fifth in that race. But that was a sign of the year. I was great in qualifying, couldn't get it always done in the race. But still to this day, modern racing cars, that's a British Formula 3 car from that era is probably the most well-balanced, fun-driving racing car I've ever driven. It had a lot of downforce, but it also had a decent amount of power, but not too much. So street circuits like Macau were just unbelievably good fun.
I was going to ask you if you went to the Far East to Macau in this then, yeah?
Yeah, so I did Macau, I think 2 or 3 times. And the year I had a really good chance of doing well in it, I ended up at crashing out at, I say turn 1, it's turn 3, but it's the proper sharp turn 1. A car braked way too late and ended up coming across my helmet. I've still got the helmet at home with a tyre mark where it came across my helmet. So, I was very lucky, and I was on the front paper of the Macau Times the next morning with this sort of car coming across my head. So whenever people moan about the halo, I'm all for it because,
I was
very lucky.
Pre-halo, yeah.
I've been very lucky a few times with things where the halo would have helped. So, I'm all for that.
So reasonable success in Formula 3, and then obviously the next step of the ladder then on up to GP2.
Yes, so GP2 is now obviously F2. F2 at the time was a thing called, it was owned by Jonathan Palmer, and it was nowhere near as good as GP2, but they've obviously rebranded now. We know it all as F2, and it is obviously the feeder series to Formula 1. And you've already learnt your skill craft. I mean, for me, you can see a racing driver's craft. You look at Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton karting, their driving technique doesn't change from 20 years ago. If they're an aggressive driver in karts, they're an aggressive driver in single-seaters. So you've already learnt your racecraft. What you learn in GP2 is how to, I call it race management, because in Formula 3 you don't really need race management. The races are 20 minutes long, tyre life pretty much just push every single lap. These races are sometimes an hour and 10 minutes, so you do need to look after your tyres. Because they're Pirellis and they are not as good as Michelin's. I didn't say that on record. They fall off a cliff. You've also got to do pit stops. And so there's a lot more strategic planning. But obviously the next step could be Formula 1. So you are basically learning to become a Formula 1 driver. You've already learned how to race a car. And I did that for 3 years. I first raced it in 2010. And then the last 2 years were with Carlin Motorsport, 2011 and 12. And the thing which was great for me in my third year of GP2, I finished fourth again in that championship. But I won. They have a thing called a feature race and a sprint race. And the sprint race is a reverse grid, so that's the easier one to win. I managed to win 2 races that year, and they were the main race, the feature race on the Sunday, which are the full length with pit stops. So that was really good for me because, you know, you're very much at your prime at that point. If you're winning in F2 now, you are ready for Formula One. You just need a few things to fall into place. Mm-hmm. And the saving grace for me was I was announced as the Marussia reserve driver in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And that afternoon, I went off and won from pole position. Mm. And I think a few people judged me for going to Formula One for various reasons. And so that was a bit of a two fingers up to them. Yeah, I'm ready for this. He's just started on pole and he won his race. So the timing for me for that was absolutely perfect.
So give you confidence. Well, of course, not everything in GP2 went now completely according to plan.
I thought this was me that put this photo in there. I will add that, so I'm not being thrown under the bus here. That was a photo, obviously, Sandoval in Monaco, and I'm going to get that was Ocean, so that was 2010. You got Sandbird here, D'Ambrosio on the right. I'm currently going airborne over the other British driver, Oliver Turvey.
Here.
So there's a few mixed drivers. Guido van der Garde's to my right, and Lewis Ratzi is in the middle. That was a very scary moment. I got such a good race start that I was looking at the cars to my right-hand side thinking, can I get in front of him before I need to brake? I looked forward and they're already braking. I was like, oh dear, this is too late. And so I was basically a ski jump off the back of Oliver Turvey, and I landed very heavily into the Armco at the exit of Sandoval. So I'd like to say I'm a pretty safe driver. I've had very few accidents in general in my racing career, but that was one of the ones which was definitely my fault, and I'll try and not do it again.
And you that was it? Presumably you were too damaged to...
I was out of that race, yeah. There's no coming back. I've already lost my front wing and I'm sort of, on my way to Mars.
Yeah, we had Derek Daly here a while ago. Have you ever seen the footage of Derek Daly when he hit the Tyrrell? He goes flying over the top of 4 or 5 cars. Quite similar, actually.
Yes, yeah. I'd rather do it in one of these cars. I had a bit more protection than he did. But yeah, it's racing. At the end of the day, racing and crashing is part and parcel of it. Mm-hmm. But I do think some people crash more than others. They just sort of, I don't know. I think they're trying to make the race at turn 1, which is a lot of people's downfall, which was definitely my downfall that day.
And it's interesting, you called it Sandoval, which we discussed over dinner there, and now you're back to calling it Turn 1 again.
I know, sorry.
What about all this American Turn 1, Turn 2?
Oh, don't get me started. I don't know, is Turn 1 American or not?
I think so. I think it's come from America, yeah.
But the only problem is that you then have to know every single corner name if you do it the British way.
It's not that hard, is it?
Oh, it is when you're dyslexic, trust me. I think I've always used that. The American sayings that I really struggle with are the straightaway. Why is it just not the straight? Why are you staying the straight away? Yeah. That's the one thing. They do have some definitely... I spent 7 years in America and they have some sayings which make life harder than they need to be.
I was watching the British Grand Prix this year, and one of the commentators, he corrected himself, but first of all he called cops. He said they're all going down to Turn 1. I thought, it's cops, it's not Turn 1.
Yeah, well, cops is the old term, I remember.
Yeah.
So, it's not Turn 1 anymore.
Yeah, from the new pits, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, America was amazing. My first experience is what we discussed earlier with racing in America was 2007, and I fell in love with it. It was the most friendly, fun paddock to be around, and I didn't know I was going to go back there. And I first started going back. Well, apart from Formula One when I raced at COTA in 12-13. I went back to actually start racing out there properly in 2015, and I fell in love with it again. It was just so friendly. Everyone stays in their motorhomes. So all the drivers in the evening are there with their kids and families having barbecues, chatting, having beers in the evening, which just doesn't happen in Formula One because it's not the drivers' fault in Formula One. They are pulled pillar to post to do events and sponsorship and TV. And it's just, in America, it's a bit more relaxed. Everyone's got their RVs and they're just having a nice time. And I then ended up staying out there from 2015 to 2001. On and off.
We'll come back to that in a moment. But of course, you've mentioned Marussia, and then of course in 2012, then you became a test driver for Marussia. Then made the big step up then in 2013 to the race seat.
Yes. So as I said, I got announced on the Singapore Sunday morning that I was going to be the reserve driver, but I already knew at that point I was going to be It was like a soft launch for the race seat the following year. They announced me as the reserve driver because there was a young driver test coming up at Abu Dhabi, and it needed to sort of be launched before then. But it was a great part of my life. I've looked at this so many times. I honestly believe if I did GP2 another year, I would have won the championship. I really do believe that I would have done that. But then if I had done that, I probably wouldn't have had an opportunity for a race seat, because the biggest problem with Formula One is there's not always a race seat available. No. So if I'd said no, let's stay down and do GP2, yes, I could be here tonight saying I won the GP2 championship, but then probably half of you wouldn't have heard of me, and I probably would never have raced in Formula One. Mm-hmm. And racing in Formula One is it's always been my childhood dream since I started racing go-karts. So, you know, you can look at things two ways, but I think in general we made the right decision, and I had an amazing time in Formula One. Yes, it was difficult because we were in a car which really was... It's different than like the cars now, because the cars now, the back markers are a second and a half off maybe. We were like 4 seconds off, but we weren't the only ones. There was Caterham, and there was HRT. There was other teams that struggled because we were basically like a fancy GP2 car with some sort of F1 livery compared to a Mercedes or a McLaren Formula One team. So it was very difficult, but at the end of the day, you just had to race against your teammate. That was your competition.
And we had Derek Warwick here a few months ago, as I was telling you, and that when you read his book, it's breakdown after breakdown. This race, the engine failed. The next race, the gearbox failed. The next, the suspension failed. Retirement. By complete contrast, that year you did an incredible thing. You finished every single race. Yes, we did. I mean, that was... You've got to give it to Marussia. They were a team which, at the time, I think their overall yearly budget was about 80 million, compared to Red Bull, McLaren, and Mercedes, who were spending 300 to 400 million at the time. And we were the only car that finished every single race that year. We had a Cosworth engine, which was a lot of it was engine, and they did a great job. But mechanically, they designed that car from scratch. And I say 80 million, you're thinking, wow, that's a lot of money. But a lot of that goes on flying the cars around and employment and catering and all sorts of stuff. The actual budget on the car was a fraction of that. So it was an amazing achievement. The thing which I look back, which was quite funny, and I'm still the only rookie driver in the history of Formula One to finish every race in their rookie year, was at their last race at Brazil. After the last race, when we managed to finish it, the team got my max pit board and put 19 of 19. And we all got photos of us cheering and doing champagne. And then some people were like, that looks like you finished 19th out of 19th. And I was like, oh, no. So I know now, the way social media is so much bigger now, it would have been like a meme that would have gone viral, Yeah. But at the time, it made a lot of sense. But I do look at it now going, that doesn't look right. But... Yeah. So you were part of quite an elite group during that period, of course. 2 world champions there, Lewis and Jensen, and Paul. The 4 British drivers. Must have been like amazing racing with them in Formula One. It was. I mean, Lewis was, I followed Lewis's career from the very early days, because he started in, obviously, go-karts, but his first thing I saw him race was British Formula Renault, and I'm going to say 2002, I think. And I was only just starting in go-karts, so I was like obsessed with Formula One. But it was, at the time, British Formula Renault was on the TOCA package, which is the British touring cars. And as you know, some of you may know, my brother's been doing that since God was a boy. So he's been doing that a very long time. And I used to watch Lewis win pretty much every race that year in Formula Renault. He was dominant. So I then watched him as he went through his career. Jensen, I've always looked up to, and I was on a training camp with him in 2009, which I thought was the coolest thing ever, because that was the year that he won the world title. Yeah. So I've always had huge respect for Jensen. I mean, if there's one driver that thinks outside the box, it's Jensen. I'm not a betting man, but I remember, you probably all remember the Canadian Grand Prix, and I think it was like 2012. Where it was like a 4-hour race because it red flagged and they're all on the start straight waiting for the rain to go down. And at the time, I wasn't that old. I had a William Hill betting account with like 10 quid in it. So I put a 2 quid bet at 50 to 1 on Jensen winning. And he was dead last at the red flag. And he won that race on the last lap. So I got my £100, and I was I just knew that he was thinking outside the box, and it proved to be right that day. Paul di Resta has gone on to have a great career. He was obviously the Scot that year. But yeah, me and Paul were definitely the subs compared to Jensen and Lewis in that photo. But Lewis Hamilton's longevity is absolutely incredible, isn't it? When you look at the other drivers in that photo, many drivers even started before him. They've moved on to things. Yep. I mean, how does it? And he signed on for Ferrari next year. I mean, How does he keep going year after year after year? I'm blown away by his passion to keep going. I mean, I'm so confident that if he had won that title the year that Verstappen sort of took it from him at the last race, he was probably ready to hang up his boots and go, I've broken the record, I've got my 8 titles. But now he's showing his inner drive, because I just think he wants that 8th title. He wants every record that he wants. Obviously, Verstappen's behind him on the records, but is slowly nicking some of the records. So I think that's motivating him to try and get to the 8, because Verstappen's already made comments about, I might not race in Formula 1 for that much longer. It doesn't seem like he's desperate to get that 7 or 8 titles. Yeah. And I think Lewis has got that drive. I think part of every racing driver as well has always had
you always want to race for Formula One and Ferrari at one point. So it's quite nice to see Lewis to go off to Ferrari. Whether it's the right decision, I don't know. But then I didn't think it was the right decision. He went to Mercedes, and look at what happened. It was absolutely the right decision. Yeah. So he's very smart, one step ahead of the game. And I hope he does get that 8th title, because I think he's a serious skill. And as you say, to be doing it for that many years and pushing yourself, because it's not just the driving side of it, it's the life. It zaps you. You are travelling for 10 months of the year. You get very little time off. And he's still pushing away trying to get that 8th title. So it'd be interesting to see what he does when he retires, whether he's interested in anything like Le Mans or not. I can't see that personally from Lewis. He's very much Formula One. But then you've got people like Alonso that took some time out, wanted to try and break the Indy 500 or win the Indy 500, went off and did Le Mans, and now he's back at Ferrari.
And he did the Dakar as well.
Yeah, and he did the Dakar. And I'm pretty sure when Fernando stops in Formula One again, he'll go off and do something else. Where Lewis, I'm not too sure. And I'm not too sure with Verstappen. I don't know where he sits with racing other things. I think Lando will definitely probably, whenever his career comes up in Formula One, will go off and try and attempt a few things, because he's just a born racer and just loves trying new things.
Well, on the subject of Lando, do you think he can do it? Him and McLaren, do you think they can catch Verstappen this year?
They're definitely going to catch him, but it's whether they get past him, if you know what I mean. They've definitely got the upper hand. I think we can all see that since that fancy G sensor brake balance was taken off the Red Bull, they've fallen off a cliff. But he has such an advantage, and they haven't lost so much advantage. They're just finishing 5th or 6th. They seem to be still always, especially in Max's car, getting points. That unless Lando wins every race and there's a DNF from Max, which realistically is possible, but it's unlikely. I think it will be within 20 points, and I think Lando will still finish 2nd. But hey, I would love to see Lando. I want to see another Brit win the championship. I'm just giving my opinion on it.
Well, maybe next year you often find a driver has the momentum one season, and it's the following season
and absolutely. You know, you've hit the nail on the head there. The momentum is definitely in McLaren's favour. They've got all the backing, the right drivers and the right team now. Red Bull, every day we wake up, are losing vital parts of their team. And they're going to have to. They've got to fight extra hard to try and fight back with losing Adrian and a few other vital members of their team. So Formula One, I always still find it exciting. I did struggle with it for some time where it was just so predictable, but at the moment I don't find it predictable, so I'm quite enjoying it again.
It's better now, isn't it, than it was? Yeah. So just going back to your own career, getting back on track. So 2014, another season then of Formula One. How did that season go? 2014
was probably the hardest year of my career. I was in the best shape and the best mindset and the best driving skill of my career, because I really not struggled. In 2013, I was up against Jules Bianchi. Jules Bianchi, in my opinion, 2015 was going to Ferrari. The year after this, he was a Ferrari driver. He was loved by everyone. He had won in everything he had done in his junior career. So I knew what I was learning from the best. And when I did beat him, and he definitely beat me a lot more than I beat him, don't get me wrong. But in 2013 winter or off-season, between the 2013 and 2014 off-season, I was so fit, probably fitter than him. I'd done a lot of sim work, and the pre-season testing, I definitely had him rattled. I was beating him more regularly than he was beating me. And definitely that year I beat him more in races than I did the previous year. But the biggest thing was, for me, that I struggled with in 2014 is I knew from race 1 that the team was in financial ruin and we might not make the next race. And a lot of people on the team didn't know that was the case. So I was treating every race like my last race. And so it made me drive extra hard, thinking this could be my last Grand Prix. And so I had some amazing results in 2014, and I really enjoyed it. Obviously, in Monaco, Jules managed to get the first points for Marussia, which was huge, which was amazing. I struggled with it because Monaco was a track that I was always brilliant at. I got on the podium in GP2, and I was always really good inherently on street tracks. And he was quicker than me that year at Monaco, and I couldn't get my head around it. And then I got a phone call from John Booth on the Monday or Tuesday when they got back from Monaco. He said, "I'm really sorry, but you had the wrong springs in your car all weekend. We thought you had the other springs in." And I was moaning about the balance of the car, and I just couldn't keep up with him. But, you know, the best thing I look back on now, obviously knowing what happened to Jules, it was the best thing that he got those points, because he did have the race of his life, and some of the overtakes that he did at the last 2 corners at the bus stop, I absolutely would not have done. So he was driven to get those points, and I think I look back now, and that day was destined for him. Mm-hmm. We fast forward later on in the year, and obviously he had a tragic accident at Suzuka, which was, yeah, I mean, it's horrible to think back. The last time I ever, well, not even spoke to Jules, looked at Jules, was on the driver parade. We all got in our own. Sometimes in Formula One, you do driver parades on trucks where you all, chat to the press, and that's always quite fun. Sometimes they put you in a classic car, which I love classic cars, but it's a bit lonely because you're just going around with a chat, driving you around. And I've got an amazing photo. It was raining on the driver parade, holding my umbrella. I've got a photo looking back of Jules holding his umbrella, smiling at me, thinking, and he's giving me that look going, what on earth are we doing here with umbrellas, driving around a track with convertible cars. And I've still got that photo. I'll never get rid of that photo because that was the last sort of communication I ever had with Jules, because obviously, again, in the race, we all know what happened, but I was chasing him down. I was more on his toes that year, so I could see he was like 5-6 seconds ahead. And I didn't even notice he disappeared because the corner he went off on was the one which was completely blind if you're 4 or 5 seconds back. It went yellow and the team said safety car, and that was that. I just thought nothing of it. And then I was thinking, why is it being red flag? Because there was already a yellow flag for Soutal going off. And it was only when I came into the pits, the head of Marussia press just said, don't take your helmet off and come to me. So I was thinking, oh my God. And she said, there's been an awful accident. But the way she was telling it to me, someone already knew it was really bad. But I've grown up from racing, never lost a teammate, and just thought, I'm sure he'll be fine. He might not race again, whatever. I was just thinking it would be fine. But then you hear how horrific it is. And I've never yet seen the video. I don't want to ever see the video because it's just not the way I want to remember Jules. But we obviously, he went into a coma straight away. And then we had to get ready for the following weekend, which was, sorry, just trying this quite hard. In Russia, it was the following weekend. And I think to this day, it's going back maybe the 70s or 80s, I've not raced in that period. I definitely wasn't watching as a kid. But usually you'd fill a car with another driver, especially if there's a car sat there. But we had his car there all weekend in perfect condition. Mm-hmm. And I think that was like a sign that, he wasn't going to race that car again. And it was really, really moving. So I was motivated to do the best job I could. But typically like 5-6 laps into the race, I had a problem with my car and we never finished. Mm-hmm. And that was the end of that Marussia journey. I mean, I didn't finish the race. Jules wasn't there. And it was a really tragic way to race because we still had 4 or 5 races of the season left. And, I didn't get to race it. The team didn't get to race it. It was difficult. But I look back and think it was a great time of our life. Me and Jules both loved doing what we did. I'm convinced he would have gone on to be a potential world champion with Ferrari. The thing I find really weird, I've never met Charles Leclerc, but I look at Charles Leclerc and for me it's Jules. The way they look, the way they talk. And I think that was a lot of Jules rubbed off on him because Jules was actually Charles Leclerc's karting mechanic. There's amazing photos of them growing up together. Yeah, wow. And so I really enjoy watching Leclerc do well now because I just think it's Jules. It's a really nice way to look at it. His spirit is living on in that sense. So, so Formula One came to a sad end for an unsatisfactory end. And as you mentioned earlier on, you'd already been to America. So you made the big move across to the States into the IndyCar. So before the full IndyCars, you did a season of Indy Lights. Yeah, so after 2014 Formula One, I decided, all the journalists have always said I'm a very smooth and consistent driver. We know that from finishing all those racing records in Formula One. Le Mans would suit me well. So I wanted to do Le Mans. The only opportunity I had was it was a great opportunity in a LMP1 car, which was this Ben Bulby designed Nissan, which was... So we've got the photos in the rock. Should we go forward? Yeah, let's forward. We'll go to the photo. Go to those first. Keep going. One more. So that was a Ben Bulby designed front-wheel drive, 1,000 horsepower, crazy hypercar. Because basically, if you look at the rear wheels, they're skinny, and the front wheels are huge, which was basically his design of really aero-efficient for Le Mans, because Le Mans is mainly straight. Now, it was a nice idea, but front-wheel drive, lots of power... was a disaster because it torque steered like you'd never felt before in your life. And it was in the LMP1 H class, which the H is for the hybrid. And the hybrid motor in the battery was 80 kilos. but we never got it to work. And typically the French said, can we take the unit out before the race, because it was carrying 80 kilos around, which was doing nothing. I mean, that's like carrying a heavy passenger around. And they said, no, you've entered the hybrid class, you must carry it. So we were driving 80 kilos around for 24 hours. There was 3 cars and none of us finished 24 hours. But it was a fun journey, and there were some amazing drivers in that program, which I enjoyed working with.
Did you do a night stint then at Le Mans?
I did 2 night stints at Le Mans, and it was just an amazing experience. I love it. I absolutely want to go back. I never got the chance to go back because I chose to go to America, and it never sort of worked. They never clashed. There was lots of IndyCar drivers like Scott Dix and Sebastian Bourdais that could go and
do both.
Race. But it was also, you needed a seat, and there's not always seats available in motorsport, as we know. So, yeah, I did that in 2015. And also in 2015, I made the decision that I was probably going to race IndyCar. And a lot of people thought it was weird for a Formula 1 driver to go back to Indy Lights. Indy Lights is less of a series than F2. It was like going back to F3. And I didn't win every time. I actually only won race on an oval, not even on the road and street courses, which is what I should have probably won on, because it was so competitive. And it's actually really hard to go from something which had a load of power and downforce to something which had no power and downforce. So I struggled a bit, but I was also travelling across the pond doing endurance racing. But it was all ready to step up to Chip Ganassi in 2016 in the IndyCar series. And that was an amazing year. Ovals are a totally different beast. I mean, a lot of people in the West, not the West, sort of Europe, think, it's boring. And it's really easy. But actually, in a way, I think I've got a lot of respect for oval drivers. I think it's weirdly harder because it's so minute. The tiniest of changes, of setup changes at 240 miles an hour make a huge difference. Overtaking is not just easy as getting a slipstream, because if you slipstream and go to power too early, ovals are pretty much 4 corners. They're not 2, they're 4. So you've got turn 1 and 2. And if you get to power too early into 1, and then you catch them too close at turn 2, you have to dump the throttle at 2, which means then you don't get the run down the straight. And it is so hard to get an overtake done on oval. It's a lot harder than it looks. So I was learning that craft. I had Dario Franchitti was my driver instructor that year. And I think I finished 15th in the Indy 500 that year. Fast forward the next year to Chip Ganassi again, and I had the race of my life. I was very close to winning the Indy 500. Some of you might have watched it.
Yeah, well, I certainly watched it live. Yeah, I remember in 2017. I mean, you led 47 laps, led it for over an hour. I mean, to me, it is the biggest race in the world. I mean, the Americans would say that. Europeans might argue with that, but certainly in terms of live audience and all the rest of it. I mean, can you actually describe? What is the experience of actually? Your crew chief tells you you're in the lead of the Indy 500. That's just incredible. It's a wild race. If any of you ever get the chance to go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, even if it's not the Indy 500 on at the time, it's an amazing event or venue. It's now owned by Roger Penske, and you can fit pretty much every major sporting event venue inside its infield. It's that big. It's a 2.5 mile oval. Not a huge amount of banking. It's not like a short oval where you've got a huge amount of banking. And you're doing 240 miles an hour. On race day, in my first year, which is the 100th running, the year Alexander Rossi won it, they reckon there was 380,000 people there. Yeah, I think it's the biggest single-day
sporting event
in the world.
In the world. You obviously have the Olympics and things, but they're over multiple days. This is all in one day, and pretty much everyone has a seat. So let's say there's 400,000 people. You've got 800,000 eyes just staring at you when they call you out. And they call it the month of May. It's a beautiful, Indiana is a beautiful month in May. It's lovely weather, sometimes rains. But it's a great place to be. And testing used to be for a month. Now it's like 2 weeks, and it's now not even really 2 weeks. It's like 5 days. And qualifying weekends the weekend before, and that's still traditional now. But you do so many hundreds of laps, probably not thousands of laps, but hundreds of laps before qualifying and race day. And you get used to the stands being 95% empty. And then on race day, they call you out. It's a huge parade of, flybys and marching bands. And you then get strapped into your car and you do these parade laps. And you then get the green flag, and you're doing 240 miles an hour with 2 cars either side of you, because they start 3 wide. And turn 1, and the whole track looks completely different. Because these audiences, it suddenly looks like you're being sucked down a drain pipe. When the whole of May, it looks really spacious and it still feels fast. You've got loads of room. Here, it's like, oh my God, and now I've got cars either side of me. It is an unbelievable event. And in 2017, I had a quick car. I was with Chip Ganassi. we probably chose to put too little downforce on. And I was never overly confident on ovals, so I didn't do overtakes like some other people did. So fast forward 10 laps, I think I'm dead last. 40 laps in, there's a major red flag for a teammate of mine, Scott Dixon, who was seriously lucky to walk away from it, flipped over from a back marker.
Accident, yeah.
But there was a huge amount of people watching the race that year because Fernando Alonso was doing it for the first time. He was missing the Monaco Grand Prix to do the Indy 500. He was leading. I was sat behind him in the pit lane during the red flag, not because I was second. I was a whole lap behind him, he'd already overtaken me. And I was thinking, oh my God, I've got 160 laps. It's a 200-lap race. I've got a long way to go. This is going to be painful. Anyway, we got the green flag. We started going. Because I was at the back, I got some clean air at times, and the strategy was always to do the opposite of what the majority did. So I finally got some clean air. Because I had too little downforce on, clean air gives you loads of downforce, and you're suddenly quick, and I was the quickest car out there. So the strategy for the rest of the day was to always try and stay in clean air, which we managed to do. And they did a strategy when everyone pitted, I stayed out, so I'm now at the front. And my car was so fast, no one could get me. But obviously I had to pit for fuel at times. But again, a couple of things went our way. And I'd led the race at that time, I think, for like 40 laps. And there was a yellow with, I think, 10 laps to go. Again, really fast car, got going. But then Takuma Sato and Helio Castroneves, that was now won it 4 times, at the time we won it 3, worked together to slipstream to catch me up. And I made a slight mistake at turn 1. If I know what I know now, I'd 100% have won the Indy 500. But I was just starting to lose the front end. The tyres were understeering. And you have these things called, you have a jacker, which pitches the car to help understeer and oversteer. But in IndyCar, you also have weight jackers, your roll bars, front and rear. And as your tyres go off, you need to stiffen or soften. And I was so focusing on throttle inputs and steering that I didn't start softening the front bar to give me more grip. And I was drifting a little bit wide. And when you lose it at 240 miles an hour, you have to dump the throttle. And I literally dumped the throttle for that quick. But that just drops the RPM enough that it gave Helio Castroneves a run down the back straight. And he just got round the outside of me into turn 3. And then I'm in trouble because I've got dirty air and no downforce. So I then was holding on for another 4 or 5 laps. And I lost 2 more positions till the end. And I finished 4th at my second Indy 500, which was my best ever result. It was a lovely paycheck, but the paycheck has got nothing to do with it because it was the race of my life. And I look back now with joy because it was an incredible day. But I just wish I knew what I knew now. But that's life. And there's people that have been winning the Indy 500 on the last corner have lost it. And I think well, if I lose sleep now when I lost it with 6 laps to go, losing it on the last corner would have been really difficult. In fact, Marco Andretti lost it in his rookie year by about 6 inches crossing the start line. So there's definitely more other people that have, I think, looked back in frustration than I do. And I just had a wonderful time. Continued IndyCar, as you can see on this next slide, with Carlin again. And that was in 18, 19, 20 and 21. I did 4 years with Carlin. The last 2 years I stopped doing ovals because I started to fall out of love with it. Found it I was thinking about the dangers too much. And once you think about danger on ovals, you're gone. So
I think it was Derek Daly, and then Connor then stood in for you on the ovals.
Connor stood in for me. They ended up having one really good result at Iowa. They put it on pole position, but then struggled in the race. But, Carlin did a good job. Coming from Europe, where they don't do ovals, to go out there and put it on pole position within a few years was an amazing achievement. But, yeah, that was when my career started to come to an end. And I basically made the decision to stop racing, but I didn't stop all of a sudden. I stopped doing the ovals for a couple of years. So
before we move on, what do you make of the aero screen now? So they took the whole halo thing to another level and have the screen.
Yeah, so this is
Fernando Alonso doesn't like it, I don't think.
No, so this is the American way of doing it, which is basically it's the same screen material as a F-15 fighter jet, and you still got a carbon roll. I think in Formula One theirs is actually metal. I've never driven a halo like the European halo, because they brought those out when I was already out in America. But you still have a chunky divide down the middle. The problem is with that, things can still come through. Like the Massa Spring, they didn't have the halo at the time, but that could have still come through. This stops anything coming through. So for me, this is safer. You do potentially have problems when it rains, and weirdly, we've had the aero screen and had very little wet races, but it's not easy when it rains if there's oil on your screen because you've got no windscreen wipers. So there's definitely downsides to the aero screen. I thought
does it still feel like a single-seater, or it doesn't feel you're in a sports car?
No, absolutely, because you can feel the air so much more than being in a closed cockpit car because of the draft coming through the lower entry point. And it gives quite a lot of dirty air through the top, so you do get quite a lot of air coming through. It definitely gets hotter than with no screen at all, but you feel a lot safer. I don't know what looks better. I still look at the Halo now in Formula 1 and think it looks uglier than that. But there's probably people in the room that think that looks uglier. I don't know. There's two different ways of looking at it. I think that looks more seamless. But I'm all for it. I mean, so many people online, I call them keyboard warriors, were so critical of it. And I'm like, well, your favourite driver, would you rather maybe lose him next week because of an accident or put something which protects them? It's the same when they first put goggles on drivers. I mean, they used to wear nothing, and then you put goggles there, thought, well, that looks weird. Then they put a tin hat on and goggles, and you think, oh, that looks weird. It's just an evolution. It's what we should do to make them look, more aero efficient and safer. I'll never poo-poo a safety idea, because I think we all need that. So
we'll come back to what we've done, the Le Mans cars as well. So what about road cars? You've mentioned that you like classic cars.
I love classic cars. This is my father's 289 AC Cobra, which, funny enough, we're in the process of selling. But it was an amazing car, unbelievably loud. I just love old cars. So I bought my wife a 190 SL, a 1959 car. I bought it 3 months after we got engaged. It was a beaten up South African car. So it's right-hand drive, which I want. I struggle with left-hand drive cars because I'm left-handed. Left-hand drive cars, you have to do the gear shift with your right hand, and I've got a lot of coordination with my left, not so much with my right. So I like right-hand drive cars. And he had it restored and gave her the keys as we came out of the church, and we still got that. I've got a 2.7 RS Touring, 1973, which is my pride and joy. I bought that in lockdown, and I will never sell that because it's just... I'm a huge Porsche lover. I think the way Porsche handles, and I think they're subtle as well. I'm not a Lamborghini lover or anything. I just like the subtlety of it. And then I drive a 992 Touring on the road day to day, which is a lovely, lovely car. Probably too stiff. Some people say it's too stiff for me.
Is that what you brought today?
That's what I bought today. I've liked stiff cars because you can feel actually what the road's doing. So for me, great Porsche German engineering. You hit a pothole, you can feel it's a pothole, but it doesn't rattle. I've also got a Mini John Cooper Works. You hit a pothole and you're looking at the sky thinking, has my shock absorber just gone through the bonnet? Because it makes an awful noise. Great Porsche engineering, it absorbs things well.
So as your racing career wound down, you've become quite a fixture at Goodwood, and obviously, as we know, one of the great things about Goodwood is the people you meet. And here you are chatting to John Surtees, who did a talk for us many years ago.
John was one of those amazing people. A lot of you in here have probably even met him walking around at different events over the years, because he was just one of those guys that was always at an event, the most friendly, loving guy. And I got to spend a lot of time with him throughout my career, so he's like one of my real idols, because his son, Henry, was in the same karting year that I was. So he was always at the karting paddocks. And John had Henry quite old, when he was quite old. So he was always an older dad. But he was always there every morning with his not keyboard, what do you call it? Pad of paper, basically. And had multiple stopwatches all on the top, timing all the other kids, writing it down. And he must have a log of every single lap that Henry ever did. He was a huge... loving dad that pushed Henry really well. And obviously Henry had his tragic accident in F2 at Brands. But he didn't stop. He could have easily fallen out of love with motorsport, because that would be the most horrendous thing to go through. He continued to come to F1 races, go to Goodwood. He was just always there. His family are so great, and they obviously own Buckmore Park, so they're always still connected to motorsport. And he would always have time to say hi to me. And I'm just one of those junior drivers, one of thousands of others. He always had time to have a chat. So he's one of my absolute idols. And I even went to his funeral because I felt like he was a big part of my life.
And per Henry's accident, of course, pre-Halo, probably if it had been a Halo in the car.
100%, that's what I mean. If a Halo was around, which I think came out probably 4 or 5 years after Henry died, Henry would still be here to this day. So I just think people that think safeties should be get rid of because of the looks is just absolutely ridiculous. We should not be losing people because of the look of something.
So from one British legend to another.
Yep.
Chat with Sir Jackie. You've got to know him over the years.
Yes, obviously Sir Jackie, it was just like John. He was always, still is to this day, travelling the world, promoting, pushing charities, pushing safety, and he has a time for everyone. And he was too old for me to remember him racing as a kid. but you just learn the heroes growing up. And Sir Jackie Stewart raced everything, won in everything, and is just an all-round great guy. So whenever they have a chance to chat to me, I really appreciate it. And this is one of my favourite motorsport photos I've had of me in my career, because it was just a great photo from the Festival of Speed one year where we were just engaged. So that's one I'll show my daughter when she's old enough to recognise it.
So on the subject of family,
yep.
You and your wife?
Me and my very supporting wife. We've been together since 2009. And the funny story is, I was racing British F3 in 2009. We started dating in February, and for the first 2 years, she now says she thought I was just doing it for a hobby. She had no idea I was going to be a racing driver. I was like, do you not think I had quit school, I didn't do any further education, and I was training every day, and I wasn't working on anything else apart from being race driving. You thought it was just a hobby. She says, I look back now and realise it was a career. And you fast forward 2009, you go forward 4 years, I was racing in Formula One. So that hobby very quickly changed into a career. But she's my absolute number one rock. I've got very supportive parents that are probably bigger lovers of motorsport than I am, if I'm honest. My mum reads motorsport news and autosport front to cover, cuts out every article of me and my brother in the Surrey Mirror and all sorts of stuff. He absolutely loves it. But my wife is, super supportive. And the great thing that I love about my wife is she's a absolute car lover as well. Her late father that sadly passed away the first week of lockdown, he has a huge part of my car love as well, because he took me to my first Goodwood revival, and obviously most of you in there have probably been to the Goodwood revival. It is just the most amazing racing event, which is part of the reason why I love it. I went for multiple years just as a spectator, and I do what all of you do. You get to the outside of a corner and make sure you're at the angle where you can see these cars just drifting and hopping. And the first time I got a chance to race in it was in, I think, 2014 in a Mustang, but the car didn't even make the dummy grid. It was leaking oil. And then this year, I've done it multiple years, but this year I actually got to do it in my own car, Lotus Cortina, which we had built.
And we'll come on that in a minute. Let's just talk about the
the McMurtry. Oh my God, we've got lots to talk about.
Yeah,
that's probably why most of you are here. The car that tears up racetracks and is everyone's I think it's everyone's guilty pleasure, whether they like the look or not. You've got to have respect for what this car does. And I'll fast forward it because I just suddenly realised we've got a huge amount to talk about, and this car is a huge part of it. I obviously love Goodwood, so I always go to the Festival of Speed. And one year, I think it was 2021, McMurtry were there with this car but no rear wing, with a fan system that didn't work. So this car is like if you take the fan system out of the car, it's like a Formula One car with no wings. It's pretty pointless. And they were because they didn't have it ready in time. They were going up the hill, and it just didn't do anything. Well, I was there as a spectator. The head of PR, Dave Turnton, caught me and saw me walking around and said, Max, you've got 5 minutes to have a look at our car. So I walked down there with my wife and friends, and he was telling me about the car walking down there. And the facts that he was giving me, I was like, this guy's either giving me the biggest load of BS I've ever heard, or this is the real deal. And we turned up to the little paddock tent. They're all in lovely clothing. And the car, the quality of it up close was great. And they were clearly engineers. And a lot of them had come from Formula One. So I was thinking, this has got to be the real deal. So I knew that I was actually stopping racing, as I said, at the end of 2021. And I wanted to have something still to drive. So I said, have you got a test drive? And they said, well, we've got Derek Bell, and we've got another guy called Alex Summers as a hillclimb guy that helps us out. And I said, well, are you actually planning on selling this? And they said, yeah. I said, you really need someone full-time. You need like a professional driver. And I sort of planted the seed because that's the job that I wanted. And they said, well, you must come and drive it. So October, we went to Castle Combe. I know,
just the man for the job.
Yeah, just the man. went to Castle Combe, and it was the first time we turned the fans on. But before we turned the fans on, the power alone, 1,000 horsepower rear-wheel drive with traction control, I was like, oh my God. I couldn't put the power down because the fans weren't working at the time. But I was like, if we get downforce in this thing is absolutely ludicrous. Not much later, we got the fan system working, which is now giving you 2,000 kilos at 0 miles an hour. That is the weight of a Range Rover sat on your car at 0 miles an hour. You try and slip a tyre with that amount of weight going down. It doesn't. So when we do a 0 to 60 launch, which we do in 1.3 seconds, 1,000 horsepower, rear-wheel drive only. So there's no four-wheel drive going on here. The traction control doesn't even kick in because the amount of load that's being sucked down onto the car, it puts so much load through the tyres, it doesn't allow them to slip. So, you know, it wasn't much longer. You fast forward 7 or 8 months from when I first drove it, we are turning up to the Festival of Speed. And 2 weeks before, they said, we're going to announce that you're going to break the record. And I said, no. What are you playing at? I said, I said, no, that's a recipe for disaster. Just say we're going to try and win the hill climb, and if we break the record, that's an icing on the cake. No, we're going to break the record. Oh, my God. So, like, the first run on the Thursday, you only get one run on the Thursday. I think I was 10.5 seconds off, and people are like, why on earth are these guys saying they're going to break it? We had, like, I think at the time, 400 horsepower, and we had 1,000, and we had low on the fan, so you can control how much downforce. So we had about 500 kilos of downforce. So very quickly, I was saying to them, we need to start giving it more, so I've got time to learn what I need to do. And I wasn't there on the Saturday because I was at one of my best friend's weddings. So I only had 2 runs on the Friday to prepare for it. So we upped it to, like, I said, let's just give it all the power, maybe not the full downforce. Suddenly got the times right down to, like, within a couple of seconds. And then I was at a wedding on the Saturday watching Alex Summers, a British hill climb specialist, which is, they are different breeds. There is a different skill set. They basically have to just think about nothing else apart from just, I'm going to send it. And he was, I think, 1/10 off breaking the record. And I was like, that was his last run of the day. So I was like, well, Clark can clearly break the record. I've got to go and do it now. I did not sleep a wink. I think I got about an hour and a half at 4:30 to 6. Then I had to, typically Goodwood fashion, traffic, had to get up stupidly early because I didn't want to get the traffic. I was a nervous wreck when I got to Goodwood. I was having to put a brave face on. I didn't want to eat a thing. I was like, I'm actually going to have to do this. And then there's so much, it's such a delayed day. There's so much going on at Goodwood. And you've only got 40 seconds twice to have a go at this. So I sent it in the morning and I broke the record. But I was like, oh, thank God I've done it. I don't have to do it again. They were like, no, you've still got to do it this afternoon because to break the record officially, it has to be done live on TV on the Sunday afternoon.
Be the final run, yeah.
Oh, it's like, oh my God. I just did not enjoy any part of it because it was so like that the whole way. So I then had to go and do it. I said, look, I'm not going to go as quick because we were, at this point, we were like a second and a half quicker than the official record. I said, look, as long as I break the official record, it's fine. I might go a bit slower. Well, I ended up going quicker. And we did a 39.08 second run up the hill.
So you can sit and pause, have a little sip of water now. So everybody, hang on to your hats and watch this.
Yeah. So that whole moment was just the most amazing day. And I tell everyone it was probably the best day of my racing career. And the thing that I find bizarre about that, it was someone's private driveway in West Sussex. And I had slaved away in fitness gyms and training all over the world and travelling to, win these certain races. And I was never to know that was going to be the best day of my racing career with hay bales either side and someone's hill climb. But it was amazing. And again, a lot of you have probably been to the Festival of Speed. The crowds loved it. And I could hear the crowd making the noises. And some of the best things that the videos that I got sent after that were all the crowd reactions. You hear this jet that sounds like a jet fighter going past. Yeah. Then this silence, and then there's this gasp. Yeah. And then you just get this, it's an amazing thing. And I absolutely loved that day. It was really, really special.
So what are their plans with this car, McMurtry? I mean, do they plan to build them and sell them, or what's the business plan?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the hardest thing in the world to sell. It's a 1,000 horsepower, track only, single seater, electric vehicle. But the people that want to drive an experienced G-force, there is no better tool. And so we have sold quite a few of these all around the world. Yeah. They haven't been delivered. We're in the process of building them.
Okay.
But it is a track only track car, and I think there's a lot of people that have got the money that wanted to be a Formula 1 driver but never got the chance. But they can't just go and buy a Formula 1 car. You can buy old Formula 1 cars, but buying a modern one to get the G-forces is pretty much impossible. But if you do, it's like vast sums of money. Engine rebuilds, and you need 12 guys with computers. This thing is electric. You turn it on. You could drive it out your garage, turn the fans on, and you've got 2 tons of downforce ready to go on a track day, and then you just plug it in and charge it. So it's got rid of a lot of the unnecessaries. And yes, it's electric. Do I love electric vehicles? It's never been my passion, but there's certain things you have to applaud electric cars and what they can do, and it's 100% torque vast amounts of power. And what I can experience in this car, G-force wise, which I'm fun enough, I'm testing the car at Castle Combe next week, you cannot experience in anything else. There's areas of this car which are far beyond a modern day Formula One car. Not everywhere. Modern day Formula One cars are quicker top speed. They have a lot more high speed stability because our wheelbase is the width of a modern day Formula One car. Our wheelbase is 2 metres. The width of a modern day Formula One car is 2 metres. So when you go for a high speed corner, their cars are so much longer and wider that they can aggressively turn at high speed. We can't because we're on a 1960s Formula One footprint. It's very slim. But there's certain corners like hairpins and chicanes, anything sub 120 miles an hour cornering, we're way quicker. We can get like 3.5 tons at 60 miles an hour. 3.5 G at 60 miles an hour around a corner.
So what about at Castle Combe at Corrie? Do you brake after the hill, or after the rise, or before the rise?
So I do a little dab before, then turn and then go, because that's a high speed corner and it's over the crest. It's not great. If we had a lot bigger footprint, we probably could. Yeah. But we smashed the track record there not that long ago. It's unbelievable what this car can do, and there's so many facts and figures I could tell you. But that old saying of a Formula One car can drive upside down at 150 miles an hour, it is true. But good luck trying it. Our car, we could just strap it to the ceiling, turn the fans on, take the straps away, and it would just sit there at 0 miles an hour. But not only that, I can then turn the traction control off and do a burnout. So it's like those kids' toys that can climb a wall. If someone made a warehouse, concrete walls with no plasterboard or anything, no cables, conduit, we could absolutely do it in our car. That's how unique it is.
So are you actually going to try that then in real life?
Without mentioning companies, there's someone in America that wants to drive it upside down on a bridge across water. But you've got to try and do some modifications to the bridge to make that happen.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that one. That sounds exciting, Max. So on the subject of America, you took it then to one of your favourite places, Laguna Seca. Yes. So this is the corkscrew here?
That's the corkscrew. Now, usually you do it the way you just drove it.
Yeah, this way. Coming down the hill.
But for a number of years, and I've never heard about it, they do a thing called the reverse corkscrew, which is like a mini Goodwood Festival of Speed. The week before Monterey Car Week, they have a mix array of road Ferraris, racing Ferraris, old Porsches, tractors, Caterpillar tractors, old Porsche 356s, motorbikes, anything. And you start at the start line, and it's like a 40-second, not even 40 seconds.
I think about here.
I think that's a new record this year of like 21 seconds. Just a bit further forward there, all the way up to beyond where that bridge is. Keep going, there. And we did that in, I think, 21 seconds, or maybe even quicker. But we did that this year, and it was an amazing, amazing fun. We didn't get many chances to have a go at it because it's all done on one day. But the hardest thing I ever had was when I came to the bottom of the corkscrew, I'm literally looking at the sky. I'm like, where is the apex? So, I was having to, lose some of my belts to see where the apex was to exit the corkscrew. And I just kept creeping over. So I did 3 runs, and I kept creeping until I could feel the curb. I was like, now I know where I am. Because I couldn't see a thing. And on that car, it's quite unique. You want to avoid the curbs like the plague, because the way the system works is it loves a smooth surface. If you go onto a curb, it breaks the seal, so then you don't get the downforce. Now, it comes back, instantly, but that moment in a corner where you're on the curb, you haven't got any downforce because you've broken the seal. So you basically have to drive. That's why you look at the Festival of Speed when I broke the record. I had a bit of room either side because I did not want to touch the grass and break the seal, because then I would lose my downforce. So you always have to drive it a little bit between the white lines. That's where it's slightly unique. And the other thing that's unique, so I can talk for days about this car, a normal racing car with downforce, when you're going as fast as you can, you've got the most amount of downforce you're going to have. So you hit the brake pedal as hard as you physically can, and then as your car slows down, you lose downforce. You then bleed off the brake pedal. With this car, the downforce is linear. It doesn't change. So when you hit the brake pedal, you just keep pushing it. Oh, I'm going slow enough now. I'll go straight back to power. There's no bleeding of the brake pedal. It's just whack, 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 off and go. Mm-hmm. So it's like a go-kart the whole time.
So we'll have a little bit of video here. So from the absolute last thing in advanced motorsport, back to something a little.
You can see what it's doing to my face. This thing gives me more joy than anything else I've ever driven. So this is a Lotus Cortina, which most of you know. It is giving me more satisfaction than any other racer car. It just proves you don't need downforce and power. Having looked at that previous video, this enjoyment-wise, you probably see me smiling looking through the windscreen there. This was at Paul Ricard in August. It's a car that I bought last year and had restored into a race car. It was a one-owner ladies' maroon car, not a Lotus Cortina, a Ford Cortina, about 15 months ago. And now it's a race-winning car, which obviously I look after it quite easily, just... give it a nice gentle drive out on a Sunday. It's great fun, great power. It's cross-ply tyres, so the tyres last for hours, but you're just drifting. And you basically make sure that your windscreen can be dirty as you like. You just need your passenger and your driver's side window to be clear, because you're always looking that way or that way, as you can see. And it's just great fun. And I think, if I'm brutally honest, motorsport, and my mum always says, motorsport's got a lot of lows for very little highs, which is probably like any career, really. And I started to fall out of motorsport, fall out of love of motorsport because of the travel and problems going with the car, and there's always something wrong and things don't always go your way. It's great when it goes right, but this has made me fall back in love with motorsport. Classic cars. Now, I don't want to race any classic car. If it's an open top, old Formula One car with no seatbelts, that's not for me. But if you're in something like this, which Jim Clark used to love, this was one of his favourite cars to drive, it is a pure joy. 4-speed, drifting it everywhere, great clutch control and it's just such good fun, and I've fallen completely back in love with motorsport. This was at the Revival this year. I managed to finish second. We qualified 8th, finished second. I came across the line 6 tenths behind a Ford Galaxy, which had...
So we have another quick video of that.
Sorry.
And,
I could talk for hours.
So if you watch, you'll see Max quite soon at the start of the video on the grass at St Mary's.
Oh, you're going to show my best moment of the race. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Well, I was going to say it certainly wasn't your fault. Unfortunately, you were closing in on the leader, got balked by a back marker, and a quick grassy moment that prevented the race win. So let's watch that.
There you go. Yeah. So I'm not going to say I'm a sore loser, but I did find out that he had a flat shift gearbox. So I think I did all right in a tiny horse-powered car compared to his flat shift 5-litre car. We did okay.
Absolutely, and I think as I said earlier, but for that grassy moment, I think that Alpha put.
I have to blame myself for that. But yeah, we got the wreath. As I said earlier on, my father-in-law was the first person to take me to the Revival, and I thought that is the great racing event to one day get on the podium, because you get a wreath and a cigar, no trophies, just wreath and cigar. That is cool, and I just loved it that I managed to make that happen. And one day I hopefully get one step better. But at Goodwood, it doesn't really matter if you win second or third. It's getting onto the start line, getting the reef and cigar and doing the parade lap. So, I'll hopefully one day get the win. But it was an amazing weekend. I had my parents there, my brother. Unfortunately, my wife wasn't there, but I'll make sure she's there one day when I get the win.
So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Max Chilton.
Thanks.
So if we could have a few lights, and I think Chris here has the roving mic.
This is the fun bit.
Anybody got any questions they would like to ask Max this evening?
The weirder the question, the better, and there's no such thing as a silly question.
At 75, I'm feeling very old in present company, and my first serious motorcycle crash was following a Ford Lotus Cortina through a bend when my ability wasn't up to it. But I was enormously impressed talking to your McMurtry young crew at Goodwood when they were doing a film there. So from now, because it's obviously a genius.
Yes. Well, I hope you're okay after your fall off of a motorbike. I love motorbikes, but I think I would probably be the same as you and fall off, so I try and avoid them. But McMurtry is an amazing, just a quick backstory on it, it's owned by an Irish billionaire called Sir David McMurtry. He's one of the nicest guys you ever meet, and his family. Completely down to earth. Again, he's got enough money to just do whatever he wants in life, but he drives a Mini Cooper S and works 5 days a week. He is just a pure inventor. Where he came to fame was he used to work on the Rolls-Royce engine department when they were doing the Concorde, and they kept having engine failures. And they worked out it was because it was when they were designing I think it was the blades for the engines, what they were designing on drawing wasn't actually being manufactured correctly per the drawing. So he designed the thing called the touch probe sensor, which some people here in manufacturing probably know what that is. It's basically a little robotic arm with a bead on the end, which will prod an object 1 million times all over to see if that 3D object matches up with the drawing. And that was his invention. And he started a company called Renishaw, which basically did micro nano sort of Renishaw that do measuring tools. And now I think they've got 4,000 or 5,000 employees worldwide, and they've gone on to design robots that can do brain surgery with tiny movements. It's unbelievable the detail they do, but it's a British engineering firm based down in Wootton under Edge in Gloucestershire. And I think he's now 83 or 84, but at the time when this whole project started, he's always loved like small designs. He's like, cars are too big. And I think he got to like 75, 76, and he's like, time's getting on. I want to design a really great small car. That's basically all he wanted to do. He didn't know it was going to go on to be the fastest crazy thing. But he went to, I think it was Bristol University or Bath University, don't hold me to that. I think it was Bath University, to their motorsport department, and said, who's the best person that's ever come through here? And they said a guy called Thomas Yates. So he hunted him down, and he was at Mercedes-AMG F1 engine department at the time. And they took him on, and he basically, Sir David said, I want to create a small car. Do you want to run a team and take on the people you think are the best to do it? It's got to be great. So Tom went and got all of his old friends from university, which now a lot of them in Formula One, said, look, join this project. We've got basically a free rights to go and do what we want. So for 3 or 4 years, they're designing this car. How do we get it fast? And they came up with basically a Hoover. That was basically it. And it started at Thruxton racetrack. They bought, I think, an ambulance off of eBay and put their system in the back of an ambulance. We're all standing in the back of an ambulance going around Thruxton. Obviously rented the track for the day, so the marshals on the side of the track were thinking, what on earth is in this car, or an ambulance? And they've nicknamed it the Fambulance, and they've still got it. And that was what their first design came in. They fast forward it, they put it into a small car, and it went on and broke the record at Goodwood, and it's now becoming their first product, which is the one you've seen here, which is the Spearling Pure, will be 100 or less track focused, 1,000 horsepower, 2,000 kilo, not race cars, just track cars. But he doesn't want to stop there. I think they want to become the Ferrari of the electric world, and so he's got the backing to go on and probably do a 2-seater, maybe a 4x4. They can put their technology in anything. But also a big part of McMurtry is not what they create. They can sell their technology, because Renishaw is based with a lot of patents because obviously people try and nick your ideas. He's got 14 in-house patent specialists. So the McMurtry car that you see has got a crazy number of patents protecting it. So if someone tries to go and take our fan technology and put it on another car, good luck, because he's patented the hell out of it. So they've got a lot of USPs to sell to other people with the technology they've developed over the last 7 or 8 years. And it's a name that you will hear for decades to come. It's not going anywhere, and it's always going to produce great bits of technology.
Well, I must talk to you further about Green Power, because Renishaw are actually a sponsor of a couple of teams in the Green Power series, so there is a big overlap there.
Yeah.
Talk about that later.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Max, just thinking about what you're saying about developing the car. A few years ago, Mark Higgins took a Subaru around the Isle of Man mountain course. How big a leap of technology would it take for you to do something like that, or for the car to do something like that? Is that even on the cards with a two-seater, a GT version? What's your thinking there?
So the McMurtry could definitely, it's got so the production, the car that broke the record up the hill had a 60 kilowatt hour battery. The customer car is going to have a 100 kilowatt hour battery, which actually, if you're just doing it on the road, 30, 40, 50 miles an hour, with a very aero-efficient car, we could do 300 miles. We could go London to Land's End easily. But then you turn the power up on the wheel, because this is where this car is completely unique. Not only is it a track car that can be faster than a Formula One car, it's completely at the driver's discretion of how fast they want to go. So there's a dial which has power, and it's literally 200 horsepower all the way up to 1,000. You just switch it, and within a second it's done. Then you've got this main one in the middle, which is the fan, and it goes from 10,000 RPM, 12, 13, 15, 18, 21, and 23,000 fan. And every time you change it, it gives you from a few hundred kilos of downforce up to 2,000 kilos of downforce. And the car is completely adaptable to what you want it to do. So range-wise, and we get asked this a lot, well, how many laps can you do? Well, at Silverstone, we want 1,000 horsepower and 2,000 kilos to beat a Formula One car or be close to a Formula One car. It probably only 2 laps or 3 laps, because you are draining the battery. It's more of the heat that you're putting into the battery. And people go, oh, that's not very good. Well, a Formula One car in qualifying can only do 1 or 2 laps with that, the way they turn the engine up and have the amount of fuel in the car, etc., etc. We could turn it to GT3 pace and do a 25-minute race around Silverstone, which a GT3 car is still rapid. So on a track day, do you need to go any faster than that? So it's got all of the attributes to do anything. If it wanted to become a road car, which someone will do the conversion, you could drive to Land's End, or you could go to Silverstone, turn it up and do a lap time close to a Formula One car. So it's got loads of potential. Obviously, the Isle of Man is a pretty big lap. I'm not sure, is it 42 miles? I could be wrong with that. How many miles? 35 miles. I mean, that's a long lap. So we would not be able to do full power at that. You could probably do 18,000 fan, which is like a ton of downforce, and probably 600 horsepower, and you could have a good shot. But let's face it, nothing's ever going to beat the Isle of Man TT record, because you have to be pretty mental and you have to be on a superbike. So I'm not putting myself forward for that one. I'd have a go at the Nordschleife, but the Isle of Man, I think, is purely motorbikes.
Plus, presumably, the camber on the road, you'd be losing the downforce, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
on, as well.
Well, obviously, drain covers is not good, and also big crests in the road. It has to be a very big crest in the road, so you'd be fine at the Isle of Man. But the bumps are funny in that car, because you really feel it, but then the car doesn't take off because it's being sucked down. So it's quite a unique experience. But yeah, we'll leave the Isle of Man to the guys on 2 wheels.
A question down here.
How would you get noticed by teams if you were wanting to become a professional driver?
That's a good question. We get asked that a lot. Like anything, and I feel like anything, whether it's motorsport or not, the world we live in is becoming more and more professional. So you have to be more and more at the top of your game to stand out. From every side of the way you present yourself, the way you dress yourself, the way you study, the way you train, the race, every single element is important. And I think now, if you haven't, motorsport, as we all know, is a expensive sport. I got criticised with that. I had wealthy parents that have given me the chance to get into go-karts and help me through motorsport. But that's probably 90% of everyone else in racing. And you have to, and there's plenty of people that have done it without, but you have to try and put yourself and differentiate yourself from others. As I say, be super professional, willing to do anything. Like Jake Hill, for example, just won the British Touring Car Championship. His dad was my first driver coach, and he didn't come from money. He obviously had enough that his dad could help him karting, but he you know, I saw it after he won at Brands. He was helping out cleaning tyres in a race. He would just say, what do I need to do to get work experience to clean tyres? And then say that he could say that he could drive. He was great on a simulator, just simulate endless amounts so your skill is as good as it can be. And you fast forward, and he's definitely had a lot of lows and a lot of highs, but he's gone on to become British Touring Car Champion. So you can do it, but it definitely is harder. I think just put yourself out there, be great on a simulator, make sure you are racing, and yeah, work experience with the right people, and never give up. Because I think if you absolutely want to do something in this world, you can do it. It might not be like, if you want to be a Formula 1 driver, you might not have the chance of being a Formula 1 driver. But there's a strong chance, if you're that determined, you'll have a career in motorsport, even being a racing driver. If you do from, how old are you now? Yeah, 14. I mean, the world is your oyster. You're fast forward to when you're 30, look back at your 14 and go, oh my God, I wish I did that. And if you did what you obviously you're asking the question, what you should know. I look back at what I could have done at 14, and my career could have been very different if I did a few things. Just do everything to the best of your ability, be polite, and work your arse off, and you will get there, I promise.
Okay. Hi. Taking you back to the ground effects of the car, and you're talking about turning the fan on. I'm just thinking about all of the debris that you must suck in through the car. So you could work for British Rail and clear the railway lines quite nicely. But seriously, you know, going around a track, and we hear about marbles and things like that after lots of cars have been around. I mean, you could suck up all sorts of stuff through that, surely.
Yeah, it's a great question. We get asked it a lot. People think, oh, you know, go on a track day and my Ferrari's going to get stone chipped the hell out of. It doesn't work like that. So it's got an amazing filtration system in front of both rear wheels, which looks like a early 2000s Dyson Hoover, you know, with pipes all twisting. And it basically segments the silt into smaller sections. So anything larger than fine dust or silt will get collected into filters. And at the end of a run, you just twist these two caps, and all of the nuts and bolts and large bits of rubber, bits of concrete, bits of tarmac will be kept. Anything that you see, like when you saw the video there, where you do see dust, that is all the sand and silt and little bits of metal, but tiny, will get thrown out, and that won't damage your car. So it's not like it's ever going to pick up a rock or a bolt and shoot it out the back, because that would be like a shotgun. It would, you know, it chucks out quite a force. So the filtration system is again one of the other things they've got many IPs on. But it's amazing what you can suck up with our car. You'll laugh at some of the places we've been to and the things we found in that filtration system. So much so, when we did an event for, I think it was Carwell, we privately took Silverstone for the day. And it was typically, we wanted to do a 0 to 150 mile, quarter mile launch on the back straight where it was wet. So they got jet dryers from the local airport to dry a bit of track down the middle. So we put our car on there because we had this nice dry bit of track. Did the first launch, and as he drove off, because I wasn't driving, it was the presenter of Carwow that did it, drove off, there was this mark on the floor, and it was the mark of our system, basically, because it had sucked the moisture from the tarmac up and back onto the surface of the tarmac, because that's how strong of a suction it has. So it's a very unique car, and it definitely could clean some railway lines for you.
So, so Liz here was Max's dentist from he was a little small boy. So
yeah.
What are your memories of Max as a young kid on the dentist chair, Liz?
Well, I first met Max when he was a toddler. And being a petrol head myself, my surgery was equipped with pictures all the way around of me driving on tracks and up Prescott hillclimb, etc. And even as a very, very young boy, he knew what he could identify each track just from the picture. His knowledge was amazing at even that age, and I was completely amazed. I'm even more amazed and very pleased to see how his career has gone on and what a success he's made of it. And I will continue to watch his career. I've bumped into him at lots of events. Obviously, like he said, Goodwood Revival, and watch him race there. And it's been a great pleasure to see how this tiny boy, who was absolutely mad on cars, has developed.
Yeah, I I've got very fond memories of your surgery and all the things you did. I actually saw you. I saw you far too often as well, because I had too many sweets, I had bad teeth, and also I lost my front tooth to my sister because we were arguing driving down the A303 what side of Thruxton was of the A303, and I was saying this way, my sister was saying that way. She turned around and threw a Coke can at me and it hit me right on my front tooth and chipped it. My mum went ballistic because it was an adult tooth, it wasn't a baby tooth. And so I reckon every year for the last 25 years I've had to have that replaced because I eat like a baguette or an apple and it comes off. So she's replaced my front tooth more times than I can remember. So yeah, I definitely remember. And you're a Porsche lover as well, like I am. So up the Porsches.
Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. A big hand for Max Chilton.
I'm gonna hang around. So if any of you want any photos or anything signed or chat, I'm gonna be here for a little while. So
sure.
Yeah,
So
please come say hi.
We're just going to have to